Hello comrades, Kamisama Bro here today, and I want to talk about Total War Warhammer 2. Now as you know, I really enjoyed Total War Warhammer 1. There's a lot of speculation, well, excuse me, I guess we should basically be clear that personally I really like Total War Warhammer. Alright, the first one was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. Now, the DLC practices are kind of iffy, but again, it's not too much different than any other game we've seen lately, Crusader Kings, or anything like that. Really, it's not. A lot of people act like it is, but it's really not all that much different. And frankly speaking, the prices aren't that bad. They could be a little better, mind you, but they're not that bad. So yeah, now that I've already put myself on a giant thing to be targeted and shot in the face. But I will say, even though I have said that, is I still believe the Blood and Gore DLC should be free. It should be an absolutely free DLC for anybody after release. I don't think they should charge for it. And if they do charge for it, it should be enough to cover the transaction fee that comes from them, which it almost is, but I still think it should be a little bit cheaper. I'm just saying, $3 for Blood. It seems kind of douchey, honestly. And even then, it's a Warhammer game. I get that you're trying to get it rated T, or you're trying to get it released in all markets, but again, it's a Warhammer game. So, just saying. That's my personal opinion on the matter. But anyway, we're here to talk about Total War Warhammer 2. Now, if you haven't seen this trailer, here in just a few seconds, I'm actually going to show it, because I think before we can really have a full discussion on this, the game as it is, I believe we need to start by checking out the trailer. So, without further ado, let's take a quick look at it and see what everyone thinks. All right, so witnessing that trailer, we can basically see there are dark elves, there's high elves, there's Skaven. Well, there's gonna be Skaven. We can tell by the little hint there at the end. And there's also going to be the lizard men. In the video, we really didn't see many of the high elf or the dark elf units, but we did see a pretty decent number of lizard men. There's going to be sauruses, skinks, slan right off the bat. And I don't actually remember what the dinosaurs riding dinosaurs are called. The sauruses on top of the bigger fellas, but we see that they're going to be in the game as well, which I'm really excited for. One of the only armies I've really played with on the tabletop itself is actually a Lizardmen army in the Warhammer Fantasy Battle before Age of Sigmar came out. And that was a really fun experience for me. I played against an undead army. So basically, giving it away, those are the main 4 factions of the new Total War Warhammer 2. Right off the bat, I like that. I'm kind of happy they're going to a new location to a degree. But we're going to go into that a bit more as we continue. But first off, I really like the idea that we are moving to a new area. There's going to be a whole new map with new factions, all that are supposedly going to play different from one another. So that's going to be really, really cool. Going further into it, one of the biggest questions I had was, with the new game, is this new map going to be entirely isolated by itself? I kind of felt like that would be a bad thing in a sense. Not being able to commute between the two worlds, the old world and Lustria. I kind of was like, I don't know about that. But it turns out on the Total War Facebook page that indeed, for owners of both Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, our first content release shortly after launch, which will be free, will be a vast combined campaign map representing the geographical areas of both games in a single map. This will allow you to start epic campaigns as any owned race, including any DLC races you own. This will be shortly after launch, weeks, not months, and will be our very first content release. That got me incredibly excited. Like, that's so good to know. So basically, we're going to be allowed to play as the races we already own from Total War Warhammer, and we're going to be able to play in Total War Warhammer 2. So that includes Bretonia, that includes the Empire, the Dwarves, the Wood Elves. If you own all the expansion packs for Total War Warhammer 1, you're going to be allowed to play with the Beastmen, all of them inside of the new Total War Warhammer 2, including the 4 new races. So just trying to name off all the factions, you've got the Empire, the Dwarves, the Greenskins, the Vampire Counts, Bretonia, the Wood Elves, Chaos, did I say the Beastmen? The Beastmen, and a couple of other ones just from Total War Warhammer 1, and then the High Elves, the Dark Elves, the Skaven, and the Lizardmen. I mean, that right there is 12 factions we're going to be allowed to play within just the first couple of weeks release of Total War Warhammer 2. So that right off the bat has me incredibly excited. I really want to see this game get released. I'm kind of hoping that the Blood and Gore DLC actually carries over as well. It would make sense, and at the same time would circumvent the need to release the game on release with blood. So they can still get their little rating or whatever, their T rating, but within like a week or 2 of the game coming out, when they do the first major content release that allows you to play all the factions, it comes with the inclusion of, if you already own the Blood DLC, you can now play Total War Warhammer 2 with Blood and Gore, which would be phenomenal. Like, absolutely phenomenal, and truly would be a huge plus on Sega's part, if you ask me. That's an absolute, if they actually do that, I'm actually going to be kind of blown away. Already combining the two worlds seems like something they should do, and they shouldn't be commended for. But honestly, with how a lot of games are nowadays, they come piecemeal. The fact that Sega is willing to do it for free, I'm giving them bonus points for it. I'm just saying if they actually do it. So we're going to see if that occurs. And again, that's probably something that excites me the most, is the fact that we're going to be able to play with the factions we already have. And I know I keep talking about it, but I can't help it. That's really, for me, one of the biggest things about this game. The other biggest thing is I'm so happy the Skaven are going to be in the game. The Skaven are actually one of the factions I originally really wanted to be in Total War Warhammer, the first one. Because again, the Skaven fit in with the setting, and with the underground mechanics that already exist in the game, it makes sense that the Skaven would be included as well. However, they never added them in, but it does look like they're going to be in Total War Warhammer 2. So, with this in mind, is this going to add a whole new mechanic to the how underground works? Is it going to be just like a tab that you picked and operates like a forced march? Or is it actually going to be a whole map underneath the already established map that you can only go under if you're playing as the Skaven? Now, I don't know if that's how it's going to be, but that would make an incredibly interesting mechanic in how you actually have to fight. At the same time, though, you don't want the Skaven circumventing the jungle in Lustria. That takes a lot of the importance of the jungle in Lustria out of the equation if the Skaven can just crawl under and do whatever they want. So that's something else to keep in mind as we go forward, if they're actually going to do that. Personally, I would like to see that in the old world. If they actually did that, again, I'm doing a lot of speculation here, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this will not be the case. But it would make sense if they made it to where the Skaven could actually move and engage through tunnels. Because in the end times, and I'm not saying we should be like, oh, let's make it like the end times, but in the end times, that's pretty much how they got the surprise attack on so many different cities at the very start of the end times, was basically just coming up under the ground and bursting up through cities, through the sewer systems and whatnot. Even Vermintide itself kind of goes about that subject a lot. So it would be really interesting to see if the Skaven are actually going to be underground fighters coming up underneath cities and whatnot. Like, how are you going to defend your city at that point? It kind of takes away a lot of the wall mechanics. At that point, there's a lot of urban warfare going on, but how do you prepare for Skaven invasions if you don't know they're coming? So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens there, if that's what occurs. I don't think it will be, but it would be a very interesting mechanic nonetheless, assuming they did. Furthermore, I'm assuming the time period is the same. If we look at Total War Warhammer is kind of the end times. Like, that's basically what it's saying it is. With Archaon the Everchosen leading the charge there and trying to take over the world, essentially for chaos and trying to wipe it all out. So it'll be interesting to see if this is basically the same timeline, just we're seeing the other side of the story, on the other side of the world. If that's the case, then the Skaven assaults are going to be really tough on the Lizardmen, because, I mean, the Lizardmen are basically wiped the fuck out. Everybody's wiped out in the end times, but they are particularly getting the snot beat out of them by the Skaven. So it'll be interesting to see what occurs there as well. One thing I kind of hope is, I actually hope that the High Elves come out, like the High Elves and the Dark Elves, come out the gate really powerful. If you look at the lore, the High Elves are pretty much in a 1v1 situation the most powerful combatants in the Warhammer Fantasy Battle world. Again, think like Lord of the Rings or anything else. Generally, the elves are really badass fighters because they've been around for thousands of years. They've been alive for thousands of years. They're very long-lived, so they have plenty of time to practice the arts of war. So I'm kind of hoping that they're really tough combatants. So if you put them up against like an Empire army, I'm hoping that just man for man, the High Elf troops are better. Sort of like how the Dwarves operate in the game. The Dwarves are definitely very tough slug fighters. Like, they can go man to man with anyone in the game. The only faction that I noticed that they really struggle to bring down in 1v1 fights are the high tier orc armies or high tier chaos armies. But everybody else, they pretty much beat the tar out of in just a 1v1 slug match. So it would be really cool to see the elves kind of giving the dwarfs a run for their money. Now, we all know in the Warhammer lore that the dwarfs actually kind of beat the elves and kicked them out of the old world as far as it was. But still, the dwarves are not as strong as they used to be. I mean, the elves aren't either, but the dwarves, particularly so, are not as strong as they used to be in their golden age. So it'll be kind of cool to see if the elves are pretty tough combatants coming into the game. I also kind of hope this includes naval mechanics in the game. Now, chances are it won't. Chances are the naval combat's going to be automated, like the older Total Wars, or even like how it is in Total War Warhammer. Assuming you actually get naval invasions, they don't happen that much. But looking at other Warhammer games and even some of the Warhammer lore, think Man of War Corsair and whatnot, naval combat is prominent in the universe. Not everyone uses a bunch of ships and whatnot, but it does occur. Now, one thing I do want to say that I kind of hope the game does not end up being like is I really, really hope that Total War Warhammer 2 does not take on kind of a Napoleon Total War look. And essentially what I mean is in Napoleon Total War, I could be thinking of Empire Total War. I think it was Napoleon. In Napoleon Total War, France was one big country, right? Well, it was one city. Paris made up the whole country, basically. So there was one major city, and if you conquered that major city, you conquered the whole country for the most part. I don't like that idea. I hope they don't do that here. I hope they don't make, like, the Empire just Altdorf. And if you conquer Altdorf, well, you just conquered the Empire. Or if you conquer, Carcassonne, you have conquered all of Bretonnia. That's dumb, and I hope they don't simplify it that much. I want there to be plenty of cities to fight for. The same number of cities we see now in Total War Warhammer. Just don't make it smaller. There's no reason to. Now, using a system like how Empire Total War is, I'm fine with that, where basically instead of it's one singular map, but there's different theaters that you have to switch to. If they do that, I'm cool with that. I would prefer it to be one large map, but I understand restraints and whatnot, so needing to shrink it down a little bit is probably important. So I'm cool with that. The one other thing I'm kind of disappointed about that we're not going to see with the new Total War Warhammer game is we're not going to see the Tomb Kings. This disappoints me, but I imagine they're saving that for the final Warhammer game, where they start taking a look at the Badlands. They start looking at the southern areas of the Warhammer universe. So we're probably not going to see Tomb Kings, and I can't remember some of the other green-skinned tribes that exist in the southern parts of the world. We'll probably see those in the final game. But again, I was very much hoping we would see the Tomb Kings and maybe the Chaos Dwarfs in the next iteration of Total War Warhammer. But just the Lizardmen and the Skaven and the High Elves and the Dark Elves is a pretty good start. And it'll be interesting to see what DLC factions are going to come out past that. There's lots of factions to choose from in the Total War Warhammer universe. I really hope they expand upon the Border Princes or Stalia, Talea. I really want to actually see fleshed out factions from those guys. I know that the actual lore itself has not gone too in depth with these factions, and they're mostly just mercenaries, made up of mercenary armies. But again, I would still really like to see it anyway. Maybe the inclusion of Cathay, or I can't remember the other one that's in the Far East, but it would be cool to see those factions as well included in the final release of Total War Warhammer. But again, until then, we'll see what else is going to be coming out, and I just want to say that I'm going in pretty excited right off the bat. The trailer itself didn't tell us much. There was a lot of symbolism as far as it was, and just kind of hints at the story. There was no actual narration, and the only thing we're really left with is defend your world, destroy theirs. That's the only tagline that's really said throughout this whole thing. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening in the end, what the game is about, and what we're supposed to do ultimately. But with that, this has been Commissar Bro. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys liked the trailer. I hope you liked this video, and I hope I've been helpful to any degree. It'll be interesting to see what your opinions are. Truly, I want to see everyone's opinion on this, and I hope that people are a lot more excited about this one than they were Total War Warhammer, because right off the bat it already seems like Sega is working to regain some of the goodwill of its fans after a lot of people have been very unhappy about the DLC policy of the games of this most recent iteration. And again, I will just restate my opinion that it's not any worse than anyone like Crusader Kings 2 or Paradox. Paradox does the same damn thing, but they're lauded for how great all their DLC is. But it's really not all that much different. They add new game mechanics, they add new factions, they add new like coat of arms, whatever. It's not all that much different than what the Total War Warhammer DLC policy is. If anything, we should be talking about how the Total War mod scene should be. Like how Games Workshop should lighten up a little bit on the modding, because I would love to see more mods for Total War Warhammer. It's such a cool game, and let's see some modding tools actually released to the public so that we can change the maps and add new factions and stuff like that. But of course, we're not going to see that because it would cut into DLC and profits. But anyway, this has been Commissar Bro, and I'll catch you guys next time.